talked in the past about how Yahshua, Messiah, is equivalent to the Torah, and vice versa. He's the Torah made in flesh. So what I wanted to do was the most important thing when we're studying the scriptures is to see how the Messiah or the Torah is at the center of the scriptures, because it's all about him. So I thought it would be a good study to go through all 66 books of the Bible and draw out the theme of each book and how it reflects the Messiah and the Torah. So the first one we have is Genesis. And the theme of that is he is the seed of the woman who will crush the head of the snake. The head of the snake. And of course we see that at the very beginning of Genesis, and it's kind of a theme through the entire book. That this is the first kind of prophecy that's given, but it's all pointing toward the Messiah, who eventually fulfills this when he, of course, is crucified and resurrects 3 days and 3 nights later, because he, of course, comes from the seed of the woman. Messiah comes from Miriam, and he, of course, crushes the head of the serpent. And we see this because this is the first kind of messianic prophecy that's given in all the scriptures. We kind of see this all through all the books of the Bible. But this is definitely the theme of Genesis, and of course that's where Messiah is sort of highlighted. Okay, when we go to Exodus, Exodus is kind of pretty easy, and you probably all have guessed it already. But in Exodus, Yeshua is the Passover lamb. Exodus is where we get the feast of Passover and unleavened bread and the first fruits, and of course we know that he fulfills that. So that's the book of Exodus is all about how he will be our Passover lamb, and where we're first given the instructions of preparing the lamb and eating it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and the whole Passover feast is set up in Exodus. In the book of Leviticus, he is our high priest. And I kind of added a little thing to this. He's our high priest, teaching us every jot and tittle of the Torah. I'll just put teaching Torah. So, I don't know about you, but before I got into Torah, or the Hebrew roots, I didn't really like Leviticus. It just seemed boring. It just seemed like all these rituals and rules and stuff that didn't have any relevance to me whatsoever. And, when I was going to a Christian church, they never taught on Leviticus. Did you guys ever have your pastor teach on Leviticus? Never. But now that we're in the Hebrew roots movement, or Torah, or whatever you want to call it, now it's like, Leviticus, because, we think about Leviticus 11, which teaches us what we can and can't eat. We think about Leviticus 23, which is all about the feast days, And now it's like, wow, now all of a sudden Leviticus has become very relevant. So Leviticus he's our high priest. He is teaching us and showing us and continuing to show us how to keep all these jots and tittles of Torah and all these do's and don'ts and all these things that point toward him and teach us how to live holy. So it's kind of amazing how when you understand about the relevance of Torah, Leviticus just becomes this whole new book that all of a sudden has all this relevance to your life. So I think that's really neat. So now we go to Numbers. And in Numbers, he casts down Balaam and guards his people. So if you remember in the book of Numbers, you have the story about Balaam and how he was going to curse Israel, and he was hired by a pagan king to curse Israel, and every time he would try to curse Israel, he wasn't able to, and instead he blessed Israel. And And so a theme that you see in Numbers is how Yah protects his people. He casts down Balaam, he casts down this, and he guards his people, and actually turns this cursing into a blessing. Of course, the king gets mad at Balaam and everything. But we see that in the book of Numbers. He protects us, and he casts down our enemies. In Deuteronomy, which essentially Deuteronomy is kind of a retelling of the Torah. It's Moses kind of giving the Torah again, a second time as a second witness. And in Deuteronomy, he's the one who declares that this Torah is very near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart that you may do it. And that is from Deuteronomy 30, verse 14. And I always think that Deuteronomy 30 is kind of the capstone of the entire book of Deuteronomy, because if you remember, Deuteronomy 30 is the scripture where it says, are you going to say that the Torah is way up in the sky, and who's going to bring it down to us? Or are you going to say it's way over the ocean, who's going to bring it? No, it's right next to you. It's in your heart. It's in your mouth. You may do it. And Paul quotes this in Romans 10. Okay? So I always look at Deuteronomy 30 as sort of the capstone of Deuteronomy. And really, I think what's important about this is, as Christians, and maybe even as Messianics, we kind of have this mindset of, we can never keep the Torah. It's too hard. It's too difficult. No one can do it. Praise Jesus. We have his blood. That's kind of the mentality we fall into. But Deuteronomy says that no, that's not the case. That the Torah is in your heart, that it's in your mind. You can do these things, and I'm here to help you do them. So, from Deuteronomy, we learn that through Messiah, through Yahshua, we can obey his commandments. And that, I believe, is the good news. Okay, so that's the Torah. It's the first 5 books. Only 61 more books to go. All right. In Joshua, he is the captain of our salvation. And what does he do? He leads us into the promised land. So, of course, Joshua is all about leading Israel into the promised land after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. I think it's about 7 years in which he leads the children of Israel, and they just conquer one nation after another. And he is the one who leads us into the promised land. That's what Joshua's about. And that's what Joshua does for us. He leads us into the promised land when we allow him to deliver us from our sinful lives, our Egypt. In Judges, he is our judge, he is our lawgiver, enforcing the Torah. So, again, before we understand the relevance of that Torah or the law the commandments have in our lives, it's kind of hard for us to picture him as a judge or lawgiver, because it's like, well, a judge of what? A law of what? What law are we talking about? But once we understand the relevance of Torah, we understand that he is our judge. He's a fair judge. He's a righteous judge, and he gives us this beautiful law or these instructions that we're supposed to keep. And a lot of the judges, like Deborah and Samuel, and many of these righteous judges, kind of reflected various aspects of Messiah. In Ruth,
you're running out of ink.
The other end on that one is
Oh,
actually
the other one
better.
works.
Try it. It'll either be better or worse.
Oh yeah, much better. In Ruth, he is our kinsman redeemer. Yeah. So we all know the story of Ruth, which is typically read during the time of Shavuot or Pentecost. And this is where, of course, Ruth, who is a Moabitess, is grafted into Israel because she holds on to her mother-in-law Naomi and wants to join into the covenant. And then Boaz is her kinsman redeemer. It is her nearest relative who is willing to raise up seed for her dead husband, which happened to be a relation to Boaz. So Boaz, of course, went, and there was a nearer relation to Ruth, who could have done that, but he didn't want to do it because he already had children. He didn't want to mar his seed. So once he refused it, then Boaz took